There are women who do not simply wound a man's heart, they annihilate generations. To father a child with them is not merely a private error, it is a philosophical crime against one's bloodline, against history itself. Imagine for a moment the ancient man who chose poorly. His seed was strong, his will unbroken, but he gave it to the wrong vessel, a woman whose essence was not to nurture life but to devour it. The lineage withered, 1,000 possible futures vanished into dust. Nietzsche warned that the most dangerous illusions are those clothed in beauty, because they lead us willingly to destruction. And what greater illusion is there than the promise of love from a woman whose soul is hollow? These are not trivial flaws. I am not speaking of impatience or vanity or the ordinary human imperfections we all carry. No, I am speaking of women whose essence is diseased at the root. Women who embody resentment, who live not to build but to consume, who see children not as beings to be loved but as weapons, trophies, bargaining chips in the great theater of power. Freud understood such drives when he spoke of the death instinct, the unconscious pull toward destruction. To tie your bloodline to such a force is to marry Thanatos itself. Why does this matter? Because a child inherits more than DNA. He or she inherits the climate of the mother's soul. Attachment theory shows us that the emotional availability or cold absence of a mother imprints itself onto the child's nervous system, shaping every bond they will ever form. A woman steeped in bitterness, narcissism, or nihilism poisons the soil from which your children must grow. Jung would say she projects her own shadow onto the child, making the innocent carry the darkness she cannot face. And once a child grows under that weight, no father's strength can fully undo it. Ask yourself, would you build a cathedral upon a swamp? Would you carve a masterpiece into crumbling stone? Then why would you allow your legacy to take root in a woman whose very being cannot sustain life in its fullness? Men today are lulled into complacency, seduced by appearance, blinded by the glittering mask of charm. But beneath that mask may dwell the void, the abyss that laughs at life itself. And to father children with such a woman is to throw them unshielded into that abyss. The first type of woman you must never father children with is the woman of resentment. Nietzsche called resentment the poison of the weak, a hidden hatred that festers when one cannot create but only criticize. This woman does not see her partner as an equal co-creator of life, but as a resource to be drained, an enemy to be subdued. Her love is conditional, her smile a mask. She will raise children not to flourish, but to be soldiers in her quiet war against the world. Consider how resentment operates. It disguises itself as moral superiority. She will cloak her bitterness in language of justice, fairness, or even maternal care. Yet beneath every word is the same drive to diminish. Erich Fromm warned that love is the act of giving, of affirming life. The resentful woman does the opposite. She takes, she drains, she suffocates. And a child raised in her orbit grows up learning that the world is hostile, that trust is weakness, that intimacy always comes with a hidden cost. Evolutionary psychology reveals something chilling here. Children absorb not only their mother's behavior, but her worldview. A bitter mother unconsciously teaches her offspring that survival requires cynicism, that power is found in manipulation. Such children often become fragmented adults, capable of brilliance yet incapable of joy, their nervous systems tuned perpetually to threat. Freud might say they live under the tyranny of the mother's unresolved conflicts, trapped in a web they never chose. And what happens to the man who ties himself to such a woman? He becomes fuel for her bitterness. She will demand endlessly but give sparingly. His achievements will be minimized, his failures magnified. Over time, his spirit shrinks, and his children witness a father reduced, not because he lacked strength, but because he anchored his legacy in poisoned soil. Ask yourself this: what does resentment create? Nothing. It cannot paint, it cannot build, it cannot nurture. It only corrodes. And if you choose to father children with a resentful woman, you doom your bloodline to corrosion. Your descendants will inherit not your strength, but her bitterness disguised as wisdom. That is the cruelest inheritance of all, to teach a child that life is something to be endured, not embraced. The second type of woman to avoid is the nihilist, the one who has no core, no center, no belief in anything beyond immediate pleasure or power. Kierkegaard called despair the sickness unto death, And it is precisely this sickness she carries, an emptiness she hides behind fashion, sarcasm, or a constant stream of distractions. At first, she may appear exciting, spontaneous, daring, liberated, but beneath that surface lies a void so vast that it devours everything that touches it. Why is this dangerous for a man who wishes to build a family? Because children require an anchor, a foundation of meaning. A nihilistic mother cannot offer this. To her, existence is accidental, suffering meaningless, love a temporary chemical high. She cannot transmit purpose because she does not possess it. And when children look into her eyes searching for direction, they will find only mirrors reflecting their own confusion back at them. Jordan Peterson often warns of the chaos that emerges when meaning collapses. The nihilistic woman is chaos embodied. She may reject tradition not because she has transcended it, but because she is incapable of discipline. She may embrace novelty not out of curiosity, but out of desperation to silence her inner emptiness. And when the novelty fades, as it always does, she will turn her dissatisfaction outward, poisoning those closest to her. Attachment research shows us that infants need not only food and protection, but a sense of emotional coherence, a rhythm of stability that tells them the world is safe. The nihilistic mother disrupts this rhythm. One day she is warm, the next indifferent, the next volatile. The child grows hypervigilant, learning to anticipate chaos rather than trust stability. Such children often carry into adulthood a profound sense of insecurity, forever chasing meaning yet distrusting it when they find it. For the man, the nihilist woman is a thief of legacy. She may bear children, but she cannot raise citizens, builders, or lovers of life. Instead, she breeds wanderers, fractured souls stumbling through existence with no compass. Schopenhauer once declared that to live is to suffer, but it is meaning that transforms suffering into art, into triumph. Without meaning, suffering is just pain. And if you give your lineage to a nihilist, that is what you condemn them to. Pain without purpose, existence without essence. So ask yourself, what is worse than death? It is to watch your children grow into strangers to themselves, reflections of their mother's void, unable to carry your name with pride because they never learned what pride means. The third type of woman to avoid is the manipulator. The one who views relationships not as sacred bonds, but as battlefields of power. To her, love is not an act of devotion, but a transaction, a strategy, a weapon. Jung spoke of the trickster archetype, the figure who twists truth into lies and thrives in deception. The manipulative woman embodies this archetype, but not in the playful sense. It is her survival mechanism, her chosen weapon against vulnerability. This woman is intelligent, often charming, and initially intoxicating. She knows how to mirror your desires, how to speak the words you long to hear, but what she offers is not authenticity. It is performance. Freud might say she weaponizes the unconscious. She senses your hidden fears and longings and bends them to her advantage. And once she knows the contours of your psyche, she will mold herself to exploit them. Now consider what it means for a child to be raised by such a mother. Every bond becomes conditional. Affection is given, then withdrawn, to control behavior. Truth is bent into whatever serves her momentary goal. The child grows up in a hall of mirrors where nothing is stable, where sincerity is always suspect. Over time, the child learns that love is manipulation, that intimacy is just a game of control. As adults, such children often struggle with trust, vacillating between naivety and paranoia, never sure if anyone's affection is genuine. Cognitive psychology tells us that children construct their view of reality through consistent reinforcement. The manipulative mother provides no consistency, only shifting tactics. This fosters cognitive dissonance, a deep inner confusion that corrodes both confidence and resilience. A child raised under such conditions may grow brilliant at reading social cues, but it is brilliance forged in fear, a survival skill, not a gift. And what becomes of the man who ties his legacy to her? He becomes not a partner, but a pawn. His energy, his dreams, even his children become chess pieces on her board. The manipulative woman thrives on control, and she will not rest until everything around her dances to her tune. His victories will never be celebrated, only leveraged. His failures will not be forgiven, but weaponized. Ask yourself, what is a legacy built on deceit? It is a house with no foundation, a structure that collapses in the first storm. To father children with a manipulative woman is to guarantee that the very soil of their upbringing is toxic, and once deceit becomes the family inheritance, truth itself becomes an orphan. The fourth type of woman you must never father children with is the perpetual victim. At first glance, she may seem fragile, even sympathetic. She speaks of her pain, her unfair treatment, her endless string of betrayals, but look deeper and you see the pattern. She is addicted to suffering. Kierkegaard wrote that despair is not simply suffering, it is the refusal to become oneself. The victim woman refuses responsibility for her own existence and instead defines herself by her wounds. This is not mere misfortune. All human beings suffer. Life demands it. But the perpetual victim makes suffering her identity. She wields it like a crown, demanding reverence for her scars while refusing the work of healing. In relationships, she transforms every disagreement into persecution, every setback into evidence of oppression. Her partner becomes less a companion than a scapegoat, the permanent villain in her endless story of being wronged. Imagine the child born into such a climate. From the earliest days, they absorb the lesson that weakness is currency, that to cry louder is to be loved more, that to blame is safer than to build. The victim mother teaches not resilience but fragility, not courage but complaint. Over time, the child internalizes helplessness, developing what psychologists call a learned incapacity, a sense that they cannot shape their destiny, only suffer it. Carl Rogers once said that the curious paradox is that when I accept myself as I am, then I can change. The victim mother never accepts herself. She clings to the narrative of injury, and in doing so, she denies both herself and her children the possibility of transformation. A child who inherits this mindset becomes trapped in cycles of dependency, unable to step into the world with strength. They grow into adults who demand sympathy rather than command respect, who seek saviors instead of forging paths. For the man, life with the victim woman becomes a slow erosion. His attempts to uplift her are twisted into failures. His strength is framed as oppression, his kindness as obligation. No matter what he gives, it is never enough, because her identity requires him to remain the oppressor. To father children with her is to bind your legacy to a narrative of endless grievance. Ask yourself this: what kind of lineage thrives on self-pity? None. Victimhood does not build, it festers. And when it becomes the inheritance of your children, it ensures they will never stand tall, but always look down, waiting for someone else to carry them. The fifth type of woman a man must never father children with is the narcissist, the one whose world has only one axis, herself. Sartre warned that hell is other people, but in her case, hell is precisely the absence of recognition. She lives in constant hunger for validation, admiration, and control of the narrative around her. To her, love is not a gift but a mirror, and her partner is not a man but an audience. On the surface, the narcissist often appears radiant, confident, irresistible. She knows how to draw the gaze, how to command attention, but beneath the facade lies a fragile core, a void that can never be filled. Carl Jung would describe this as the inflated persona, a mask so carefully constructed that the true self withers beneath it. For her, children are not souls to be nurtured, but props in her ongoing theater of self-glorification. They exist to reflect her brilliance, to extend her image, to serve as evidence of her supposed greatness. Now consider the child raised in this atmosphere. Every achievement is stolen, reframed as the mother's triumph. Every failure is magnified, a stain on her carefully polished reflection. The child grows in a prison of conditional love, adored when they serve the mother's ego, neglected or punished when they dare to assert their own individuality. Developmental psychologists call this enmeshment. The child is not allowed to be separate, to breathe their own air. Their identity is consumed by hers. What happens to such children? Some grow to mirror the narcissism, continuing the cycle of self-absorption and domination. Others become perpetually insecure, doubting their worth unless externally validated. In either case, they are denied the freedom to become whole, authentic beings. Their souls are bent to fit into a narrative that never belonged to them. And what of the man who fathers children with her? He becomes a secondary mirror, useful only as long as he reflects her magnificence. His needs will be invisible, his sacrifices unacknowledged. Over time, his presence diminishes until he becomes little more than a supporting character in the drama of her self-worship. His children will witness this degradation and absorb it, learning that the man is expendable, that fathers are ornamental, not essential. Ask yourself, what is the destiny of a bloodline bound to such a woman? It is not legacy, but spectacle. Not growth, but performance. To tie your lineage to a narcissist is to ensure that your children will never belong to themselves. They will forever orbit a sun that gives no warmth, only burns. The sixth type of woman you must never father children with is the hedonist, the one enslaved by appetite, incapable of restraint, living as though pleasure were the only measure of life. Epicurus once noted that pleasure must be tempered with wisdom, yet the hedonistic woman rejects wisdom. She lives in pursuit of stimulation, intoxication, and distraction. She confuses indulgence with freedom, not realizing that her unchecked desires make her the most obedient slave of all. At first, she may appear exhilarating. She brings energy, spontaneity, the thrill of excess, but soon the mask slips, and what you see is dependency, on substances, on attention, on novelty. To her, discipline is oppression, and sacrifice is a foreign language. Yet fatherhood requires precisely those qualities: discipline, patience, foresight. A woman who flees from restraint cannot create a home. She creates only chaos disguised as excitement. Now imagine a child raised by her. Developmental psychology makes it clear. Children model the behaviors they witness. A mother addicted to consumption, whether it be alcohol, materialism, or endless validation, teaches the child that craving is destiny, that self-mastery is impossible. The child learns that the answer to boredom is indulgence, that the antidote to pain is escape. Over time, such children often grow impulsive, anxious, and unable to endure discomfort, the very opposite of what resilience demands. Neurobiology confirms this truth. The repeated cycles of indulgence and withdrawal reshape the brain's pathways, dulling its capacity for stability and self-regulation. And the child inherits not only her biology but her example, the ceaseless craving that becomes a family curse. Schopenhauer described life as a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom, but the hedonist never transcends this. She remains trapped in it, dragging her children into the same cage. For the man, the hedonist partner becomes an endless battle against entropy. His resources vanish into her appetites, his sacrifices wasted on temporary highs. He finds himself parenting not only his children, but the mother of his children, forced into a role of endless rescue. His energy that should be invested in building a legacy is instead consumed by containing her chaos. Ask yourself, what happens to a lineage born of unrestrained appetite? It collapses. It grows soft, undisciplined, unprepared for the brutal demands of reality. To father children with a hedonistic woman is to offer them not a future, but a slow decay. A legacy squandered in the name of pleasure that never satisfies. The seventh type of woman to avoid is the ideologue, the one who subordinates all life, all love, all flesh and blood reality to an abstract doctrine. Camus warned that ideology, when worshipped as absolute, becomes a justification for cruelty. The ideologue woman sees not her partner, not her children, but the banner of her cause. She does not nurture individuals, she molds instruments. Her home is not a sanctuary, but a training ground for ideology. At first, she may appear principled, passionate, noble, but look closer and you see rigidity, not strength. For her, every choice must serve the doctrine, every word must advance the cause. If her ideology demands she sacrifice her partner, she will. If it demands she sacrifice her children's individuality, she will. Nothing is sacred except the idea. And in this way, she resembles the zealots of history, who burned books, silenced thinkers, and even offered their own kin to the flames, all in the name of a higher truth. Now imagine the child raised under such tyranny. Instead of being loved as a unique soul, they are measured against ideological purity. Every mistake is political, every preference suspect, every doubt treated as betrayal. Cognitive behavioral insights reveal that children raised in rigid environments often develop either crippling conformity or explosive rebellion. Either they grow into obedient slaves of the doctrine or fractured souls who distrust every structure. In either case, their individuality is lost. And what of the man tied to such a woman? He becomes not a partner but a heretic in waiting. If he falters in devotion to her creed, he is denounced. If he questions her principles, he is condemned. His role is not to love, but to comply. Over time, his masculine strength, meant to build, to protect, to guide, erodes under constant ideological scrutiny. His children witness his subjugation and learn that love is conditional upon conformity, that loyalty is rewarded only when it kneels before dogma. Ask yourself this: what happens when ideology invades the cradle? It produces not citizens but soldiers, not free beings but instruments of a cause they never chose. To father children with such a woman is to betray them to a system before they even discover themselves. The ideologue does not raise human beings, she raises extensions of her dogma. And when your children's souls are devoured by the idol of abstraction, your legacy ceases to be yours. It becomes property of the cause, and the cause has no mercy. The eighth type of woman to avoid is the controller, the one who fears freedom so deeply that she smothers it in everyone around her. Erich Fromm distinguished between love, which liberates, and domination, which enslaves. The controlling woman does not love, she manages. She treats her partner and her children as projects to be engineered, extensions of her own anxieties. Her care is never gentle. It is surveillance disguised as devotion. At first, she may appear responsible, even admirable. She is organized, decisive, and always knows best. But beneath this lies fear, the terror of chaos, of unpredictability, of life itself unfolding beyond her control. To protect herself from this fear, she tightens her grip on everyone in her orbit. For her partner, this means constant correction, subtle emasculation, endless criticism disguised as concern. For her children, it means suffocation. Their curiosity is monitored, their individuality trimmed, their mistakes punished not as learning, but as rebellion. Developmental psychology shows us that autonomy is as vital to children as food and shelter. A child who is never allowed to explore, to fall, to rise again, becomes stunted in both courage and creativity. The controlling mother does not raise explorers, she raises dependents or rebels. Some children become paralyzed by fear of disapproval, never daring to act without permission. Others grow resentful, exploding into reckless defiance the moment they taste freedom. In both cases, the seed of true independence is strangled. And what of the man? To live with such a woman is to endure slow suffocation. His leadership is undermined, his judgment questioned, his freedom negotiated like a privilege rather than a birthright. Over time, he is trained into submission, like a lion caged so long he forgets the savannah. His children absorb this spectacle, learning that manhood is not strength but concession, that fatherhood means nothing unless approved by the matriarch's hand. Nietzsche once said, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster." The controlling woman believes she is fighting chaos, but in truth she becomes the chaos, an order so rigid it collapses into tyranny. Ask yourself, what legacy can be born in such a cage? None worth preserving. To father children with a controller is to doom them to grow without wings, or to grow wings only to burn them in the fires of rebellion. Either way, your lineage is broken before it begins to fly. And finally, there is the most dangerous woman of all, the one who has no capacity for love. Not merely resentful, not merely nihilistic, not merely manipulative, but utterly barren in spirit. Camus spoke of the absurd, the confrontation with a world that offers no inherent meaning. But while most wrestle with that tension, she embraces the void as her essence. To her, people are utilities, children are burdens or ornaments, and intimacy is a theater of convenience. She is not cruel because she enjoys cruelty. She is cruel because she feels nothing. Evolutionary biology reminds us that love, attachment, and nurturing are not accidents. They are survival mechanisms encoded into our species. When these are absent, something has gone profoundly wrong. The woman incapable of love may still perform the motions. She may smile, she may coo, she may say the right words, but there is no warmth behind them. The child who grows under her gaze senses this emptiness. The human nervous system is exquisitely tuned to authenticity. Even infants recognize when affection is false. And when love is absent, the child's brain rewires itself for survival, not growth. Such children often grow into adults who cannot attach, who drift through relationships haunted by an ache they cannot name. They may seek validation endlessly or isolate themselves completely. They are prisoners of a void not of their making, condemned to echo the mother's emptiness. Jung might say they carry her shadow, forced to live the unlived life she denied. For the man, such a union is not merely destructive, it is annihilation. His love will never be reciprocated, his sacrifices never remembered. He will pour himself into a vessel that does not hold, and when he is emptied, he will discover the cruel truth: she was never truly there. His children will inherit not the fullness of life, but the echo of absence. So here is the final warning. Never give your seed, your name, your future to a woman without love. Beauty cannot replace it. Intelligence cannot disguise its absence. Strength cannot compensate for it. Love is the one soil in which life can truly grow. Without it, every other virtue collapses into dust. To father children with a loveless woman is not just a mistake. It is the betrayal of your ancestors and the condemnation of your descendants. The task then is not only to avoid such women, but to know yourself deeply enough to see them clearly. For in truth, the danger lies not only in their existence, but in your blindness. Awareness is the only shield. Choose wisely, and your lineage becomes a fortress of light. Choose wrongly, and you cast your blood into the abyss.